Hi guys, and welcome to the monthly tech show. This is going to be, again, a slightly different take, same as last month, where we're going to be doing a little bit of a vlog segment just to sort of give you an update of what's happened across the month, and then the news after that. So yeah, stick around and I hope you enjoy it. Jeez, what a week this has been. So it's kind of been insane. First of all, I had the RX 470 and RX 460 delivered pretty much on the same day. I got the actual RX 470 I think on the Monday. Where obviously many Facebook messages. Got the review was going live on Thursday. I didn't have a CPU, and I didn't get that CPU to test with the 6700K until Wednesday afternoon, so I did all of my benchmarking on Wednesday afternoon for the video to go up on Thursday morning, Thursday midday, so that was crazy. And then I tested the RX 460, which went out on Monday, depending on when you watch this, like end of the month. So yeah, it's been absolutely insane with specifically just reviews. And then the even more crazy thing, which I hope you've seen the video for, is the application that I wrote in collaboration with Adore TV and actually a really amazing guy who actually lives in America and basically just has decided to help us out with all of the stuff. So he rewrote the application and he rewrote Jim's Python file into the C# project, which was great. But basically if you haven't seen the video, it's a launcher for a benchmarking program called PresentMon, where it's kind of like, we've basically made it like Fraps, but you can also manipulate the results quite easily as well, which is awesome. So yeah, that's been consuming my entire life. I've had replies from Linus Tech Tips, which is cool. They've tested it out, and I think, I believe, as far as I'm aware, they're going to use it. So that's nice, and I've had a reply from Ryan Shrout from PC Perspective, who at the time has just gone to Quake Live, or QuakeCon, so he will be hopefully testing it when he gets back. But yeah, it's I think both Hexus have picked it up, hopefully Tech Power will pick it up as well, which would be really nice. And yeah, it's looking like, at least for the response from companies, is that it's becoming a kind of industry standard program, which is just kind of incredible, considering that I am not a programmer. This is very much just a part-time thing, but yeah, it's awesome. I've already done so many videos. I mean, this is just the first week of what was it, September? No, August. God, I'm going mad. So this is the first week of August, and I've already done all the videos up until the last week, except for the RX 480 Strix, which is screwed. Like, the card is DOA, so I'm hoping to get a new one of those on Monday. But yeah, geez, bloody busy. Okay, so I realised that the people that are watching this probably aren't the people who I need to speak to for this, because you guys are lovely and amazing, but you know, if there was a point I would like to pass around this week, it would be that if you watch a review and it doesn't quite line up with how you've either heard about the product or you know, what you personally think about the product, please don't then go and immediately comment, "Oh, this is clearly a paid, you know, review. Oh, you're a sellout. You're a dick." Because, for example, my AOC monitor review, more professional reviews pointed out that their models had not perfect color accuracy, and that at 60 Hz the input lag was relatively high. Now, personally, it's a 144 Hz monitor, so I run it at 144 Hz, but even when I've been running it at 60, it's still been perfectly good for gaming. The color accuracy, I've had it next to a 10-bit IPS color matched display, and obviously the colors were different, especially because the AOC one is TN, but it certainly wasn't that far off, and I've done design work on it. In fact, the channel logo you see was made on that, so like that sort of thing, that it's still clearly a very functional monitor, but because somebody else said that it wasn't as good as I said it was, that clearly means that it's a paid review or something. Also, reviews are inherently about my opinion of a product. People seem to think that it should be some impartial, you know, just showcase around the features or something. And I generally do that first, and then I give my opinion. But my opinion is what makes it a review. It gives you an idea of, from my perspective, from someone who has used you know, 50 or 60 different monitors and stuff like that, you know, how good it is in comparison to those, especially for the bag of money. So, you know, when I wake up in the morning and I see 4 or 5 comments out of the maybe 50 that I've got over the night, that, you know, I'm a sellout, I'm a paid, you know, paid review man. And you know, reviews are pointless because you're just giving your personal preferences of styling and stuff. And like, yes, that's what review is. I'm sorry that you've listened to someone else who said that the product is more crap than I said it was, but that doesn't inherently mean it's a review. You could have just said, you know, I've heard from someone else, I've heard from, you know, this source that it doesn't have good color accuracy. You said it does. How come? You know, what's the difference here? And I would have been happy to reply to that. But when you go, when I've seen from more professional reviews that this has crappy color accuracy and crappy response times, you're clearly paid for it. You were clearly paid for this, and yada yada yada. I'm like, come on, man, screw off. So yeah, that's what happens when I wake up in the mornings most days. Okay, so I just spoke with TalkTalk, my internet provider, for a little while here, and well, I woke up this morning with no internet access. Router was still working fine and all that sort of stuff, but the primary and secondary DNS servers weren't listed as they usually are. The sort of thing I normally just turn the router off and on again, you know, sort of thing that works fine. But well, apparently not. So that's certainly an issue, and I spoke to them on text chat to find out that they don't know what's wrong. They will basically need to run network diagnostics to find out why. And then from that, they will then decide whether they need to send a actual engineer out or not. And see, the thing is that they have this policy where you have to wait at least 48 hours before they actually send a network engineer, which means that they have to wait at least 2 days from the moment you contact them before they can actually send an engineer, which is already crazy. And it's a Wednesday, so technically, because it's like midday on a Wednesday, I should be able to get an appointment on Friday midday or Friday afternoon. But since I'm going to Taipei, which hopefully you've seen the MSI log, I'm leaving on Sunday and getting back on basically Thursday morning. I will be completely without internet access for a week and a bit, which is terrible because one, this laptop needs internet access to be able to install Steam and actually run some benchmarks, which I apparently cannot do. The Strix RX 480 that's over there, that video can't be done until well, apparently until I get back, because I can't do the GTA benchmarks because Rockstar won't let me go online, like go do offline mode, because of their ridiculously heavy DRM systems. So that's great. And also the mouse guide video, which will be up on Monday for Vessel viewers, that won't be up either. I think I'm just about to walk over to the public library and use my partner's laptop to upload that. But yeah, great, good job, thanks guys, hate you. Also, the customer service guy, he was nice enough, but it was obvious that one, he was using his software and just clicking buttons to respond, and two, they've clearly got this kind of, oh, you've got to be chummy with a customer kind of policy or something, because they said, I said, look, this is a week this is going to be possibly a week of me paying for a service I'm not getting, what the hell, fix it faster. And the guy said, I know the feeling, I pay for this too. I had this exact same issue last year, and it was, you know, it just takes time to get resolved. And I'm like, I get that you're trying to be chummy with me, but at the same time, you've just told me that this type of thing happens a lot, and that your customers are left for literally weeks at a time without internet access. So, you know, maybe rethink that strategy just a little bit. But yeah, maybe I'm just better. Alright, that's about it. I'll let you know when I have internet access. So, two interesting things happened, at least one interesting thing happened, and another thing that I'll just tell you about. But basically, first of all, why do people keep stealing my videos? Like the RX 460 review, the XFX one, but this very card, the review that I did on this, someone basically re-uploaded the video, and it looks like the channel has just re-uploaded like so many freaking videos. That one from Gamers Nexus sent them a tweet, so hopefully they get that video removed and stuff as well. But it's just mad because I've had quite a few recently, and to make it clear, if you want to take my video and like use certain shots from it or something, send me an email or something and say, hey, I'd like to include it in your video, and I'm probably going to be okay with that. But at the same time, if you just take my video, don't tell me about it, and re-upload it as your own with your own Amazon affiliate link so you can earn some money, sod off, I'm sending a copyright takedown notice. Like, that's how that works. I make something, I inherently have copyright over it. So anyway, that's the interesting thing. Also, the second thing is that my health still isn't great. It's actually kind of getting worse at the moment, specifically my digestive system and stuff like that. A lot of pain, a lot of blood where there shouldn't be, and stuff like that. So yeah, it's fun. Not really. Hopefully I will go see a doctor at some point when I'm back from Taipei, because with the current system, it takes me a couple of days to get an appointment, so I don't get back until sort of midday Thursday. So yeah, it's gonna be fun, but yeah, thought I'd let you know. This should really be in the news segment because, well, this is technically news, but I guess this is more just my opinion and reaction of this. But Tesla just announced their Model S and Model X P100D. That's the 100 kilowatt hour battery dual motor design, and holy crap, I want one so bad. It's 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds, which is roughly the same speed as a Ferrari LaFerrari, Porsche 918, and McLaren P1. That is, like, they are £1 million cars basically, and I think the P100 is something like £100,000, so it's 1/10 of the price. You never have to pay for fuel, and it's awesome, and you get the same performance. So yeah, that's really impressive. Obviously there are many differences between those cars and the Tesla, namely you know, actual performance in, you know, track racing and stuff like that, cornering ability, that sort of thing will be very different. Top speed I think is decently lower and that sort of thing, but regardless, it's still really freaking awesome. And yeah, I just want one really badly. My old neighbour has a P90D, and that thing is insane, and he doesn't have he doesn't even have the ludicrous mode update. So yeah, God, they're ridiculously awesome. I've driven an Aston Martin DBS and a Ferrari 360, and even just sitting in the passenger seat of the Model S, it's just such a different experience to be pinned in your chair, even when you're going 80 miles an hour. So yeah, that's pretty awesome. But yeah, on to the news. So first up in the news, we're going to be talking about how Tesla are now offering a 2-year lease for their Model S and Model X cars. Now they're going to come in at a pretty hefty price. You've got to put about $7,000+ down as an initial, with around $600 a month, so they are still pretty pricey, but it does make it a little bit more accessible if you want one of these rather awesome cars. Phil, what do you think?
Yeah, my personal opinion, cars, I'm not much of a sort of leasing or finance kind of person. I like to sort of, you know, put the money down, buy, own it. But I can see there is this trend. I know quite a few people who I've met in sort of my working life and, you know, all over the shop like to swap their cars quite a lot. So the idea of a 2-year lease is very attractive to them, because obviously if they change their mind, want to move to a different car, they're only tied in for 2 years, rather than sort of something longer like a 3-year or 5-year, or actually buying the car and having to live with the consequences of your decision. But that's just my opinion. Yeah, I could see this making it more accessible, question mark. The $7,000 initial money down is a lot, and then also the like $600 a month, $593 per month monthly payment. It's still not going to make it sort of a wide mass market, but it will become more appealing to those who sort of like to jump into a car for like a couple of years and then change their mind a lot, or just people who, I don't know, I've never fully understood leasing personally.
Yeah, so in terms of leasing, like to give you an idea of price differences, obviously this varies depending on when you watch it, and you know, where you are in the world and that sort of thing. But for example, as one of my sort of favorite cars, the Nissan GT-R, if you wanted to lease one of those, I think you're looking at somewhere between £3,000 and £5,000 as a deposit, with probably somewhere around £600 as a monthly fee. So it's pretty much, in terms of like actual money, you know, if you look at the sort of exchange rate type thing, it's going to be fairly similar to lease these two types of cars, with obviously them being fairly similar value, at least in the UK anyway, around about £70,000 to £100,000 depending on sort of what spec and model you go for. So in terms of leasing just as a whole, if you are planning on buying or getting a new car, it is relatively a good idea, because obviously when you buy a car, there's obviously the initial cost that you know, money goes out the door. But if you look at that as a sort of business venture, sort of as an investment as such, you look at how much money you can get back if you sell it after, say, 3 years. And if you look at the depreciation of the majority of cars, that value is the cost to you, because you obviously you spend, you know, X amount, but you get, you know, Y amount back, so that the cost is Z or Z, or however you say it. So if you lease a car, you basically end up spending the same amount of money, generally speaking, while you know, having access to the car, and often not having to worry about maintenance, taxing, all that sort of stuff. So there are some benefits to it. There's definitely some added value. Generally speaking, buying a new car is financially just generally stupid, depending on, you know, which sort of car you're going for, obviously. But generally speaking, it's still quite nice that this is available, and if I could afford it, I'd probably get one.
Yeah, I mean, each to their own. I mean, like, you know, you say, yeah, it's just 3,000 to 5,000 up front. My car cost just 1,000 on top of that, you know? And that's like, it's a 18-month-old used hatchback. Okay, I'm maybe not the best authority to comment on, you know, cool cars or whatever, but I guess I'm just too practical for all that. To me, like, the idea of leasing a car is a bit like sort of the Spotify or Netflix business model. You don't own it. You may have access to all the content you want, but that doesn't change that at the end of the day, if you stop paying money, you're not going to be able to play music or watch films. It's sort of that. It's that kind of commitment. I like, you know, I'm just a very opinionated person with a stupid little car. Don't listen to me. Go get a Tesla and be cool.
Be happy.
Unlike me. So next up we have PCIe 4.0. Now for you, those of you with AMD who are only starting to see PCIe 3, this might be news to you, but those of us on Intel in the next year, maybe 2 years, may be seeing PCIe 4.0, which is supposed to be pretty good. Andrew?
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of like actually seeing it come to fruition, I'd probably expect 2 to 3 generations of Intel processors, especially the sort of more mainstream desktop. You might see it in Enthusiast first, depending on which refreshes first and that sort of thing. But basically, the spec of it is meant to be double the overall bandwidth. So an X16 slot would be 31.5 gigabytes per second, whereas currently on Gen 3 it's half of that. You'll also have up to, or even possibly more than 300 watts on the PCIe slot itself, and considering even GTX 1080 graphics cards generally don't pull more than about 300 watts total anyway, you're looking at potentially completely removing the need for PCIe power cables. Obviously this will be something that you'll have to likely have a beefier motherboard connector or something like that to be able to pull that much power through. So there will be some different changes that might need to happen. Or even just plugging your PCIe power cables into the motherboard directly or something like that. But regardless, that's pretty cool, and obviously means that we've got a bit of an upgrade from the 75 watts. And one of the really the other cool things is that they're actually making a full standard for having a PCIe external cable. Obviously right now with the external graphics card docks that we currently have, we're looking at, you know, basically Thunderbolt 3 using a USB Type-C cable, which is actually really cool. I like the way it works. It's obviously very small and that sort of thing, and is basically already a direct PCIe link. There are some vulnerabilities and stuff like that to work out, but Regardless, that is still quite cool, but we now have basically a standard for external graphics cards that might be quite interesting. It'll be interesting to see if that gets adopted or Thunderbolt 3 gets adopted. I think that'll mostly be, the determining factor of that will be if AMD motherboards won't support Thunderbolt, because obviously Thunderbolt is an Intel technology, but you do have, for example, AMD motherboards that currently have Intel networking ports on them, for example, so they might just lease out that technology so that it's a bit more, available to people, sort of thing. So yeah, it's definitely cool. I'll be interested to see. Phil, you had an interesting point about actually running 300 watts through a PCB.
Yeah, I studied electronics at college, and the idea, see, I like the idea of the thick cables that you get with, your power supply to plug into your graphics card, into your motherboard. They're thick for a reason, well insulated. See, the danger has long been that if you touch your motherboard when it's switched on, you're going to damage the components. It's going to become more likely you're going to possibly damage yourself with that much power running through it. It's the same reason why you don't touch an open running power supply. I mean, that's dealing with mains power, but it's a similar principle. It's going to potentially do you a lot of damage. And I was also thinking the flimsy motherboards you see, you get the flex, even when you're putting components on, pushing it in, you feel it flex. I feel like with this new spec, if you're wanting to put that much power through, you're going to have to sort of beef up the PCB you're using. We might be seeing possibly thicker, just more robust motherboards in general in the future that implement PCIe 4, given it's going to be having 4 times the power going through it than the current PCIe 3 supports. And for reference, actually, the article we've got up here from tomshardware.com actually says Titan X reference design is 250 watts. So with the minimum of 300 watts that it can supply, according to the spec, and this is only version 0.7 of the spec. The idea is they will keep doing 0.1 increments throughout the rest of the year, and they will publish hopefully the 1.0 by the end of 2016. That will be the final spec, which will be the ones that motherboard manufacturers will be working from going into, they are projecting 2017, like Andrew said. Probably going to be waiting a couple of generations. I expect it's probably going to be Skylake E, the enthusiast grade Intel platform, that is going to be the first place we actually see this. But who knows, it could actually take a little while longer. Obviously, this one has actually taken, I think, twice as long as the previous one. So, for reference, PCIe 1 was 2003, 2 was 2006, and 3 was 2010. So now, 2017, they're going to be having 4.0, so that's 7 years versus the previous 4 years. So it may be interesting to see whether adoption takes a similar sort of protracted period to become mainstream. But who knows, I'm actually quite excited about this, because really, it's just going to be really tidy builds. There are going to be no cables. PCIe 5, it'll just be all wireless power inside your case.
I think you're getting ahead of yourself here, Phil. In regards to talking about actually running the power through the motherboard, as I said, it will be interesting. I also studied electronics, actually with Phil. Regardless, it will be interesting to see, because obviously the current traces aren't really set up for large amounts of power. It'd be either perhaps thicker traces, as in deeper traces, or perhaps more, effectively parallel traces running to the same connectors, or just generally wider, that sort of thing, so that you can actually deliver that amount of power, because obviously there's effectively a limit to how the amount of actual copper you have there, versus how much current you can run through it before it gets too hot and effectively melts through the fiberglass. So it will definitely be interesting to see how that works. I would like to see some thicker motherboards so that bending them is less possible, which is always nice. And I'm actually thinking about this as a kind of, from a budget motherboard, the kind of £30 to £50 motherboards to your £300 motherboards. Maybe, especially in the early areas of PCI 4.0, I'm thinking that it might be something like almost like USB Type-C, where you'll have PCIe 4.0 support available, but with Type-C, for the majority of motherboards and even laptops, most of them actually only have 36 watt support through the port. You actually have to get something like Gigabyte's Ultra Gaming board to get the full 100 watt support, which is kind of interesting, and is something that I would expect to see happening. So, the cheaper end motherboards might only have 75 watt support, but the higher end ones will have the full 400 watt support. So Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I expect it, as I said, it'll be sort of Skylake or even the one after that, in terms of when it actually, comes to the platform and comes to be putting in people's hands. So, yeah, as I said, it'll be interesting to see. So next up, we're going to have just a little bit of a sort of conversation about No Man's Sky and a little bit about Star Citizen as well. It's obviously a very highly acclaimed game in the sense that there has been a lot of hype around it and then a lot of people not feeling like it lives up to the hype. So yeah, Phil, what's your thoughts on what you've seen so far and that sort of thing?
Yeah, because I'm friends with a lot of nerds. I've been hearing a lot about No Man's Sky and what's been going on with that. I haven't played it personally, nor have I played Star Citizen. I've sort of had an outsider perspective on this. But from what I can tell, there was a lot of hype, and they went on like loads of different news channels, like a huge deal for a video game company. Obviously, I think it was because of the size of them. So there are a 15-man team based in Guildford, which is a small town not far from where I live. Well, not small, sort of medium-sized.
It's a city.
Shut up! I don't know places. But the important thing is they were a small team and they were delivering this huge title that was going to be this huge, expansive, open world experience. And the comparison I've seen is like Minecraft, that sort of thing, only on sort of a galactic scale, like thousands, millions, billions of different places you could visit, tons of different functionality, like different spaceships, different stuff like that. And there's loads of posts on Reddit of people sort of listing what's missing. So it feels like they built up a lot of hype and dropped a lot of bombs like, oh yeah, it's going to do this, this, and this.
Definitely.
I think it was like customizing a ship, and no, there was like one ship to choose from in the beginning, and like the ability to name everything, and you can't name your ship, and stuff like that. And people are just starting to get like really, I say pissy about it. Probably they're just saying, you said it was going to do all this, and clearly they're still developing and adding to the game. I don't think it was 100% ready for release. It's one of those things where they've built it up a lot and they sort of had to rush to get it released, and not everything they said is actually in there yet.
So yeah, as you said, the creator Sean Murray was on a lot of news shows, and he was talking about all the features. So for example, I remember seeing he was on Stephen Colbert's show, and they were talking about and Stephen was asking, oh, can it do this, and can it do this, and oh, can you do this, and Sean Murray was like yes to all of the things, and that happened time and time again. And effectively, it's like promising, all of these fantastic and wonderful things, and then when it actually came to having the game in hand, there was a lot of things that were missing. Especially, I think one of the key things was this sort of in-game economy. That was one of the big things. Is they promised that you could mine stuff, go sell the stuff to other factions, fight in wars with other factions, and ships would just turn up and stuff like that. And also the multiplayer experience was one of the biggest sort of headline. I think even stuff like the BBC might have covered that with, basically two players were on the same planet looking at the same thing, but they couldn't see each other, and that was because the multiplayer support that was and wasn't meant to be there, almost like it just downright wasn't there. So it's a bit of a, I feel sorry for them because they are such a small team and they did make such a ambitious project. They made something, and it's clear that they can, given time and money, they will be able to implement all the things they said. And I think in 6 months or a year's time, if they're not bankrupt, then they will make, No Man's Sky will be a fantastic game. But I think that's just the hitch. It's going to be in a year's time with enough time and money type thing. So it's a little bit disappointing. It's not a game I'm going to personally be buying at any point relatively soon, but it does look awesome, but once it's fixed.
I'm just going to point out here that actually in quite a few of the interviews, Murray and some of the other journalists will actually caution and say this is, we're an indie company, we're very small, do not expect something incredible. And they did sort of say we expect this to be quite niche, and obviously it sort of exploded and lots of people say we want to get into this niche, and they sort of torn it wide open, and obviously they're seeking to avoid the pitfalls of another game that actually come to mind, Spore. Obviously that was meant to be the whole explore the galaxy thing, and it sort of just got to this boring point. If you've ever played it, you'll know what I mean. It sort of starts really good and sort of tails off towards the end. With No Man's Sky, it just seems a lot of the complaints are just the gameplay itself at the moment is quite repetitive. But obviously they have said that they are going to be fixing all the technical issues that people are having with it, and they are going to be expanding the features of the game in time. And it does contrast actually quite a lot to Star Citizen, which I know Andrew is more enthusiastic about than me. But Star Citizen is an example of one of these more big, ambitious projects done right, I would say, in that it's sort of been very staggered over a longer period of time, and it may not have had the huge hype explosion that No Man's Sky sort of exploded into life, and now it's just sort of sitting there, and everyone's like, huh. Whereas Star Citizen is very sort of protracted. Would you say that's the right word to say, Andrew?
Yeah, it's sort of almost prolonged, I guess. As someone who does enjoy the project as a whole, it's the project is awesome, and I think the main thing for me is that there was a video that was on the front page of Reddit PC Master Race, which was basically the creator of Star Citizen saying, "Hey, look." This is somebody. They asked a question and basically said, "Can we, do flybys of planets and stuff, and like dip into the atmosphere, not have to, actually land on the planet or anything, that sort of thing." Just so that I can get an idea, basically a recon mission type thing. And he said that's, in version 1.0, that's not something that's going to be there. It's something that they've put some money towards and they've hired some people to do it, but it's not something that's going to be there. And then now in version 3.0, it's there because they've been just slowly adding features. And I think the other thing for me is that obviously with No Man's Sky, it was very much here's the game, here's the thing, here, go pay the $60 and that's it. Whereas with Star Citizen, you've been able to play at very least bits of it, like the hangar type stuff, and then more and more and more as just updates are being released since fairly early on. So version like 1.0, you could download the hangar bits and play with that and play in your spaceship and sort of take off and land and that sort of thing. And then they added more and more. So people who have actually already bought Star Citizen are still able to play stuff, which I think is a kind of big difference. But yeah, it definitely feels like fairly similar projects, but done very differently. And personally, I think Star Citizen, despite being very, very long in the making, and I'm really looking forward to when it's actually available as a game to just buy and play, it should be pretty awesome. And as I said, No Man's Sky is going to be something that in 6 months, a year, or whatever's time with enough money will still be an awesome game. So yeah.
And finally, we're going to be looking at something that's dropped just this week. AMD have announced their new Zen architecture, which will, fingers crossed, be proving to be the heart of all of their future processors. Andrew, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I was actually on a press call today. Obviously, we filmed this a little bit in advance, so you will have probably had this information available already. But regardless, basically Zen is their kind of overall architecture. It's not the actual code name for the specific processors. The first lineup is actually going to be the Summit Ridge CPUs. Which they demoed last week, talking about their 8-core 16-thread, comparing to a Broadwell E 8-core 16-thread, which is, as we basically know, a 6900K, but they do that for legal reasons. Basically beating the 6900K in a Blender render test, which was obviously very awesome and nice to see that an AMD CPU can beat a Broadwell E CPU, regardless of what chip it is. So that was pretty awesome. But I had a call today specifically about the microarchitecture, and while I can't go into a massive amount of detail because I can't remember it all off the top of my head, basically there are a lot more improvements in terms of efficiency. So obviously they quoted 40% instruction per clock improvement in performance at the same wattage or the same power draw, which is actually really good. And what they're aiming to do is, instead of having multiple lineups of CPUs, effectively have one overarching architecture that can span from being their ridiculously, heavy, effectively Xeon competitors, their Opterons, their server processors, all the way down to potentially phone type chips, like Intel Atom type chips, and anything in between, including the Jaguar cores that are currently in the Xbox One and PS4. They're looking to upgrade those as well into the same sort of lineup, basically, all using the Zen architecture. They're looking at a lot more, especially performance per watt improvements as well, which is actually really important. Stuff like they're doing clock gating, so that they actually turn off certain functions of the CPU while they're not being used in that cycle. And they also have SMT, or simultaneous multi-threading, which is basically hyper-threading, but allows you to fill in the gaps a little bit more in terms of if the certain parts of the processor aren't being used at any one point in time. They're also doing fetch and decode a lot quicker in 2 different paths as well, which is really nice while they put them in the micro-op queue and stuff like that. So basically it's a lot more efficient in terms of the actual architecture. They're basically all of the numbers that you want to see have gone up, which is awesome. And all the numbers that you want to see go down have gone down, so that's good. And yeah, that's the kind of overarching thing. I'm sure that you can check out some more detailed information on the actual Zen microarchitecture. I'll leave a link to that one down below as well. But yeah, Phil, what do you think of Zen as a whole? Yeah.
Exciting, I guess, because the one thing that is always... I started on one of my first computers I can actually remember with an AMD Phenom X4, and Intel has sort of surged ahead, and AMD have sort of been playing catch up a little bit, and they don't have that sort of presence that Intel do. Like, AMD is still, you know, most PC builders recommend them as sort of the budget choice. If you're spending less than like £400 or something, go get your AMD chip and spend your money better elsewhere. But the fact that this might put them on par, or maybe even, you know, in a position to be really competitive with those high-end Intel chips, is really exciting. Obviously, we don't have any like processors yet. We don't have any actual, you know, specs to look at and compare like for like with Intel, nor do we have any sort of formal benchmarking yet. But obviously, depending on how long it takes AMD to turn this architecture into processors and get them out on the market, we're going to be hopefully seeing, I would like to say in the next year, I don't know if that's maybe me being optimistic or not, some of these processors coming to light. I have a feeling they're going to start with their sort of i3 competitors and then sort of build up from there. Although I actually kind of hope they're just going to release everything at once, so then all of the review channels have got actual work to do. Not that they don't do work.
What are you trying to say? This is a review channel. But yeah, in terms of the timeline, it's they made it very clear that they will not be releasing any chips until 2017, so we won't see them until CES perhaps. That I would potentially expect them to demo them at CES, perhaps even launch them then. But you know, at a longer timeline, you're possibly looking at Computex in June, somewhere in between CES and Computex. I would suggest would be the launch for that one in terms of what I've heard. And in terms of which chips will be out first, again, it's pure speculation, but since they've demoed that 8-core 16-thread chip, I should hope that that's one of the ones that come out first, and that's obviously a Broadwell E competitor, not the Skylake competitors. So obviously the Skylake competitors will be the ones that people will actually go buy in terms of, you know, especially volume, but at the same time it will be very nice to see AMD back in between, you know, being actually on par with Intel, if not trying to beat them, as opposed to just, you know, being the value option, because it means that Intel have done some crazy things like charging £1,700 for the enthusiast, or, you know, $1,700 for their enthusiast chip, which is a $700 price hike. So yeah, that's fun. I know that that's just to not make sure that people don't buy the 10-core chips instead of the Xeons and stuff, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Also, another cool thing is that AMD's GPU market share has actually jumped up 4.8% this year so far, to be at 34%. So they're a little over a third of the GPU market right now, which is actually really awesome. And I look forward to seeing that improve as well as more RX 480s, 460s, and 470s come out, and you know, people buy them. And obviously at that price point, they're definitely the more value card in terms of who's going to go buy them. So yeah, that's pretty awesome, and looking good for AMD. I think their stock price has risen 330% in the last year, so they're doing pretty well.
Stocks always have to come into it, don't they? Yeah, following on, I was going to bring up the GPU side of things. You beat me to it. I'm hoping that what they do with Zen is going to be what they did with the RX series that they've launched. They've launched it, and it's been awesome. You know, it has done really well for them. They hit the price point bang on the head where it had to be to sort of bring them back into the sort of competition, firing line, into the competition, to actually be able to sort of bite away at Nvidia's huge market share that they've got, especially at the lower end, which is what AMD are really good at. And if Zen can get the pricing right on this, they are going to be giving Intel something to be worried about, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Hashtag Team Red.
So that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, feel free to leave a like down below. If you're still watching at this point, feel free to say something amusing in the comments. You know, whatever you fancy, really. Potatoes, there you go. That's amusing. Yeah, other than that, feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. And yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. So thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.